Ladies and gentlemen, when life breaks you, when the ground beneath you crumbles and everything you thought was solid turns to dust, the first step toward rebuilding is not pretending it didn't happen, it's acknowledging that it did. Too many people try to move forward by ignoring the damage. They hide the cracks behind a smile, cover the bruises with busyness, and try to convince the world, and themselves, that they're fine, but there is no healing without honesty. You can't fix what you won't face. You can't rebuild something you're still denying is broken. There is no shame in the fall. The shame is in staying there when you were meant to rise. Life breaks everyone at some point, and anyone who tells you otherwise is either lying or hasn't lived long enough. The question is not whether the pain will come. The question is whether you will allow the pain to purify you or poison you. When you acknowledge the ruin, you take back the power to rebuild. You take the hammer out of life's hands and put it into your own. You stop being a victim of the story and start becoming the author of the next chapter. But understand this, acknowledging the ruin is not an act of weakness, it's an act of strength. It's not a confession of failure, it's a declaration of readiness. It's you saying, I see it, I know it's broken, and I'm still standing, and I'm not going to stay broken. Denial delays destiny. If you keep lying to yourself about how much it hurt, how much it cost, and how deep it broke you, you will keep repeating the cycle. But if you confront it, if you face it and feel it, you can change the narrative. You're not the only one who's ever fallen apart, but you might be one of the few who decides to come back stronger, wiser, clearer, and that decision starts with telling the truth. Yes, it hurt. Yes, I'm not who I used to be. Yes, this broke me, but it will not define me. What defines you is not the damage. It's the decision to rebuild, and that begins the moment you stop hiding the wreckage and start preparing to rise. You can't heal in a lie. You can't rebuild while pretending there's no damage. But the good news is, once you face it, you can fix it. Once you acknowledge the ruin, you give yourself permission to rise. The moment you acknowledge the ruin is the same moment life offers you the blueprint to rebuild. But only if you are willing to start with what's left. And often, what's left doesn't look like much. It's not impressive. It's not glamorous. It's just fragments. Shattered confidence, broken dreams, maybe even a wounded spirit. But hear this clearly. God never asks you to rebuild with what you lost. He asks you to start with what you have. And what you have is always enough. We waste too much energy grieving over what walked away instead of giving thanks for what stayed. We cry over people who left, doors that closed, and resources that dried up, forgetting that whatever remains was always meant to be the foundation. The broken pieces are not useless. They're the raw materials for the next chapter. But if you're waiting for perfect conditions to begin, you'll never move. Rebuilding doesn't require perfect tools. It requires a willing heart. It takes courage to look at the mess and say, I'm still going to build something out of this. Some of the greatest things ever created were born out of what didn't seem valuable at first. That idea you still carry, that skill you developed in silence, that little bit of faith you've still got tucked away in your soul, it's enough. Stop disqualifying yourself because you're not where you once were. The future does not demand you to be the old you. It requires you to be the honest, raw, resilient version of you that remains after the fire. That version has something the old you didn't experience, endurance, and the memory of what God brought you through. Don't underestimate the power of what's left. It may not look like much to the world, but the world doesn't know what God can do with a willing vessel. You're not building alone. You're building with grace on your side. You're building with wisdom you didn't have before. You're building from a place of understanding, not fantasy, and that makes the new stronger than the old ever was. So take the pieces, take the pain. Take the lesson and start building again. Not later, not when it all makes sense, but now. Because what remains is proof that you're still here for a reason, and what you build next might just be the very thing that changes everything. Rebuilding begins when you stop begging for clarity and start walking in obedience. We often confuse God's silence with absence, but silence doesn't mean He's not working. It means He's waiting on you to move. Waiting on you to trust what He already said. So many people stay stuck, not because the path is blocked, but because they keep asking questions God already answered. They're waiting for another sign, another confirmation, another voice to tell them what they already know deep down. But faith doesn't wait for perfect visibility. It obeys in motion. Obedience isn't about understanding every detail. It's about trusting the one who sees what you can't. It's about saying, even if I don't see the end, I'm still going to take the next step. The problem is we want guarantees, not growth. But growth doesn't come with guarantees. Growth comes with movement. And if you keep waiting for the full picture before you act, you're going to miss what God is trying to do with you right now. Every time you hesitate in obedience, you delay your breakthrough. That hesitation becomes a gap between what you're capable of and what you're actually living. Some people stay in dead places, broken relationships, unfulfilled potential, simply because they won't obey what they already know they should do. They know they should walk away. They know they should start over. They know they should forgive, but they're still asking God to confirm what He already commanded. You don't need another voice. You need to respond to the one you already heard, and maybe that response isn't loud. Maybe it's a whisper of surrender. Maybe it's a quiet step forward. Maybe it's a simple yes. But whatever it is, it matters, because delayed obedience is disobedience, and obedience is what unlocks favor. It's what opens doors. It's what brings alignment. You've been equipped with everything you need to take the next step. Stop looking for validation from people who don't know your calling. Stop overthinking what God meant to be simple. Obey, move, trust. Even if your knees are shaking and your heart is uncertain, move anyway, because your obedience will always take you places your logic never could. Clarity may come later, but right now, obedience is the assignment. And when you obey, you'll find out what was waiting on the other side of your faith. Pain is not always the enemy. It's often the birthplace of purpose. What most people try to run from is the very thing God wants to use to refine them. When you go through pain, it feels like you're being torn apart. But what's really happening is that you're being stripped of what you can no longer carry into your next season. Pain doesn't just break you down. It breaks off what was never meant to last. It exposes false attachments, uncovers hidden pride, and tests the strength of your foundation. You don't know how real your faith is until it's been bruised. Some of the most powerful people you'll ever meet are the ones who had every reason to give up, but they didn't. They turned their pain into a platform. They made purpose out of what was meant to destroy them, because they realized something deep. Your pain has a voice, and when you stop trying to silence it and start listening to what it's teaching, you grow. You mature, you evolve, you learn how to walk with scars and still stand tall. The problem is, too many people let pain define them instead of develop them. They wear it like a badge instead of using it as a weapon. Pain is not your identity. It's your instructor. It's teaching you how to endure, how to discern, how to walk by faith when nothing makes sense. It's building a strength in you that comfort never could. And if you allow it, pain will show you what truly matters. It will teach you to stop chasing approval, stop settling for half-hearted living, and stop playing small with a calling that was never meant to be safe. You weren't called to avoid fire. You were built to survive it, to walk through it and not be burned. But in order to do that, you've got to stop asking, why me? And start asking, what now? Because if the pain came, there's a reason. If the struggle showed up, there's something inside you strong enough to stand through it. You're not a victim, you're a vessel, and vessels go through crushing so they can pour something out. Your pain has purpose. Let it mold you, not break you. Let it press you into the presence of God, not into isolation. Let it turn your tears into fuel, because on the other side of that pain there is power, and it's waiting for you to rise. Rejection is never easy. It stings. It cuts deeper when it comes from the people you love, the places you served, the ones you thought would always support you. But hear me, just because you were rejected doesn't mean you were wrong. Sometimes God allows rejection because He's trying to release you. Not every connection is meant to continue. Not every place can carry your next season. When you're chosen, rejection becomes a part of the process. It's not punishment, it's redirection. See, when you're truly called, you won't always be welcomed. In fact, the moment you start walking in purpose, the circle around you gets smaller. Why? Because purpose creates pressure. And pressure exposes who's really with you and who was only with your comfort. Some people like the version of you that needed them. The moment you start standing in strength, they feel threatened. And so the rejection comes, not because you changed for the worse, but because you grew for the better. But here's what you've got to understand. Being chosen means being set apart. And being set apart will often feel like being left out. But you're not left out, you're being lifted up. God is pulling you away from what distracts so He can position you for what's divine. Rejection is not always the devil. It's often the hand of God closing a door that would have kept you small. That would have kept you begging for crumbs when you were called to build the table. Don't chase what walked away. Don't try to reopen doors that were shut for your protection. If they left, let them. If they misunderstood you, release them. You don't need to explain your calling to those who weren't there when God whispered it to you. You don't need to defend your growth to those who only loved your weakness. Rejection is painful, yes, but it's also proof that you're being repositioned. God will never let rejection go to waste. It becomes the fuel, the filter, and the force that drives you toward destiny. So wipe the tears, stand tall, and walk forward. Not bitter but better, because rejection wasn't your end, it was your beginning. And now comes the part many don't like to hear. Once you've been chosen, once you've been rejected, once you've been processed, separated, and crushed, now you must remain silent, not because you're weak, not because you have nothing to say, but because silence is strategy, silence is strength. There's a moment in every chosen person's journey when they realize that their greatest weapon isn't in proving people wrong, it's in staying focused. It's not in explaining yourself, it's in letting your fruit speak. You don't have to clap back. You don't have to correct every lie. You don't have to announce every step. When God is elevating you, your silence becomes a shield. You are not obligated to give anyone access to your next move, and in a world that constantly pushes you to post, prove, and perform, there is power in withholding, there is power in moving quietly, there is power in building privately. Because when you're truly being positioned for purpose, noise becomes a liability. Attention becomes a distraction. Let them think what they want. Let them say what they will. Let them wonder, because they won't see you coming, and that's the point. You've already cried enough. You've already explained enough. Now it's time to work in silence and let the results speak in volumes. Let them doubt. Let them walk away. Let them mislabel your silence as weakness. It's not weakness. It's wisdom. You know what they don't know, that you're being developed in the dark, that you're being sharpened in silence, that your silence is the soil where your next season is taking root. God hides what He values, and if you're hidden right now, it's not punishment, it's preparation. You're not invisible, you're being incubated. He's building your foundation so strong that when the world finally sees it, nothing will be able to shake it. And those who once dismissed you will realize they should have paid attention not to your words but to your work. So stay silent, stay steady, stay submitted, and when it's time you won't have to shout. The outcome will speak louder than anything you could have said.